The views and opinions expressed on the cap are those of the hosts. They do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of OldMilk Media. Any opinions stated aren't intended to offend anyone. On episode 504 of the Cap Podcast, we discuss Might Delete Later by J. Cole. Welcome back. This is episode 504 of your critical but accurate tour through Hip Hop, the Cap Podcast. We are your tour guides. I am Nate Sperlin. That is Taylor McLeod. Thank you for tuning in on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever else you might be getting your podcasts. Feel free to go ahead and join the conversation by leaving a comment, liking this video, and subscribing to the channel. Taylor, how are you doing today?
Per usual, I don't have much to complain about. The only thing I have to complain about is this music we're about to talk about. But I'm not complaining about the music. I'm talking about I'm too old for surprise albums now. I got real life going on. I don't have time. Like, it used to be that like a surprise album came out, I was like, oh my God, this is the best. And now it's like, oh, surprise album on Thursday night, and I got a whole weekend planned out. Like, me and you are like talking throughout the week, being like, I don't think we're gonna record this weekend. And then of course and it's not like a surprise album from a nobody, right? Or even
Yeah.
from like a middle tier person that we can be like, all right, it sucks, but we both have real life to live. It's like, no, it's Cole, so we have to talk about it.
Yeah, 1000%.
Right.
That being said, I think we should just get into it. On
Yeah.
this episode, like as I just said, we are going to be discussing Might Delete Later by J. Cole. This mixtape is 12 tracks long, 43 minutes long, featuring Ari Lennox, Young Dro, Gucci Mane, Cameron, Boss Twice, Central C, Daylit, and Ab Soul. Like once again, join the conversation in the comments below. That being said, Taylor, what is your first reaction to Might Delete Later?
Uh my first reaction to this is a lot different than it would be to a lot of other projects from big artists. And even if this had just been a surprise album from J. Cole without the context of the whole Kendrick, Drake, J. Cole thing, it would feel a lot different, wouldn't it? I would
Yeah.
be excited to be like, all right, what does J. Cole have for us? But the timing of it, especially knowing that Metro and Future are coming back next weekend, there's so much context here that really shifts how I feel about it. So I can't lie. I've been listening to like 5 or 6 songs, a lot from it, and pretty much anything with a feature, I'm like putting to the side for right now because like we're in the middle of like this. I don't know if it's a battle because it's like nothing is like really, really gone too crazy yet, but it's like I'm very concentrated on just the J. Cole rap. So my first reaction is that a lot of the rapping here is good. Now, how it pertaining to like what's going on, I'm sure we'll get into it because we said we weren't going to get super deep into this last episode, and then like we did, and I think it's just unavoidable, and maybe that's a good thing, honestly. So my first reaction is that I all of the songs that are just Cole, I like. I think he's rapping really well. The intention behind some of it is obviously more pointed than maybe some other stuff. So overall, I like it. And it's just another piece into what we're seeing unfolding, which will hopefully lead to more good music down the road.
Yeah. My first reactions are I hope the trolling over the diss track that J. Cole sent at Kendrick doesn't make J. Cole want to delete this project. Because overall, like I think that the music is really, really good on it. Um, it doesn't feel like a J. Cole album, but obviously like not because it's supposed to be a mixtape. When I first like dropped, I was like, okay, like this doesn't really feel like a J. Cole album. But then like more and more people keep using the word mixtape, and I used the word
Yeah.
mixtape before I introduced the album or mixtape, excuse me. So see, I'm gonna be balancing album and mixtape throughout this whole thing. But yeah, like it doesn't feel as cohesive as a J. Cole album does, but obviously it shouldn't because it's a mixtape.
Yeah.
It kind of feels like a for lack of a better comparison, it kind of feels like a untitled unmastered situation for J. Cole, or like he's just like putting it out for fun. So that's my first initial reaction. I also want to know when these tracks were made. That's something I really, really want to know, and that also would impact how I feel about this as well. Because if these tracks were made within the span of 2 weeks, then this is amazing. But like
Yeah.
if it's like a bunch of loosies, just that he just put together, still a really good project. But some of the luster isn't on it as much as if he made it within the 2 weeks. Also, the release of this album and the presence of the response to like that adds to We Don't Trust You's instant classic bid. Because again, like the the reverberations around the industry that we're getting from We Don't Trust You, this I would count as one of them. So that adds to that. Also, there's lots of talk about J. Cole on this album. J. Cole is talking a lot about him entering his prime now, and we really haven't seen him rap this way on back-to-back albums like the off season
Yeah.
and we might delete later. We haven't heard him rap like this hungrily back to back since Born Center in 2014 Forest Hills Drive. So that's really, really good. Also the T minus and the Alchemist having production credits on this album and the way that Cole just like murders every single beat. It kind of confirms to me how the platinum with no features kind of hurts J. Cole's discography. Like the 2014 Forest Hills Drive, that was cool, but then For Your Eyes Only and KOD really end up being a stain on the legacy because like if we eliminate those two and we go Born Center for your not excuse me, Born Center 2014 Forest Hills Drive, the off season and then this, I think that it's a much stronger four albums versus Born Center 2014, For Your Eyes Only, and then KOD. I think that
Yeah.
yeah, I think that this would be much stronger. And I also with that, I also think that this is a much better body of work than For Your Eyes Only and KOD, especially KOD. Like For Your Eyes Only, I understand like he did like it was like more of like a tribute type album. Like I understand that, like I'm gonna excuse that, but KOD, there's no excuse for that at all,
No, yeah.
period.
That
Um
album's not good.
yeah, not it's not really that good. So that's my first initial reactions.
Yeah, I agree with you about everything. That KOD For Your Eyes Only era, that's backwards, but it's kind of like when you and I were in college, which is those 4 years, right? It's
Mhm.
like those two albums were the time that you and I were in school. Cole was definitely like pulling away from like playing ball with everyone else, and it was definitely like, hey, like I am, at that point he would have been early 30s. It was like I'm, in my 30s now. Like I know, I have things figured out, and I'm gonna, like it almost felt like he was like not retiring necessarily, but slowly just like backing away from everything and being like, I did what I was supposed to. And now obviously it's fully come around to where Cole is fully back, and he like you said, he sounds really hungry. I think it's interesting. You can also tell, especially on 7 Minute Drill, but on some of these other songs through here, that he's been spending a lot of time with Drake.
Mhm.
Cause like he's like doing things that like Drake does that we're like, I don't know about that. And then Cole does it, and I'm like, is this a thing now? You know what I mean? We have like the two of the biggest rappers in the world like doing this stuff. So like that's interesting to me. I think that, I mean, like I said, Cole is so good at this point at rapping that I'm never gonna like listen to a J. Cole song and be like, oh man, that was like so terrible. Like that was unlistenable, right? And I think that we talk about a lot of artists that do that. Um, it's tough. It's tough because like I wouldn't call myself the biggest J. Cole fan in the world. I never have been. I really love Born Center when it came out, but like, I was 15, so it's different. And I don't know how you feel about it. Um, I don't think that like Kendrick on Like That didn't say anything crazy, right? He
Mhm.
like made fun of the big three, and then he made fun of like Drake's album names, right? He was clever with Drake's album names. And then we have 7 Minute Drill here, we have some other shots here, and Cole is just like, oh, like, it was a very strange diss actually, because he was like, yeah, you were in your prime well before, like you were successful well before me, and you have at least two classic albums, and but that one that everyone thinks is like amazing, like a beautiful art project, that one was boring, and it's like I don't know if that really lands as well as it's supposed to. So I don't know. There's two things stand out to me right now. First of all, I don't necessarily love hiding the response, not hiding it, but putting the response in a mixtape.
Mhm.
It's like, all right, so now we got to listen to 11 songs to hear you respond, right? At
Mhm.
least 11 songs to hear what you have to say. And unfortunately, this is it's not the main event,
Yeah.
right? It's not what we want. It is what we want a little bit. It's competition, but like you know what I want and I know what you want, and it's
Yeah.
not this,
Yeah.
right? It's like, and I don't think it's a thing where like, oh, he like Cole's going first, and then whatever, there will be another one right behind him. But it is like the only reason that Cole was brought into this on the Like That verse is that they're on tour together and they're talking about the big three. Like that whole song wasn't really aimed at, or that whole verse from Kendrick wasn't aimed at J. Cole, right? And so now we have a whole mixtape with little shots and then a song with, big shots, I guess. But it's still like, it'd be like if like an undercard fighter like jumped in the ring at the end and was like, all right, I got this. And we're like, okay. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
all right.
I mean, honestly, this played out exactly how I predicted it would, honestly. Like I knew that J. Cole was gonna respond, but like I knew that there wouldn't be much venom in the response. Like it's all like it's all friendly competition, at least the J. Cole Kendrick part of it, which I appreciate. Honestly, I'm not as mad as about the having the diss track as the last track on a mixtape as much as you are, because honestly, these two artists are artists that we rarely hear from anyway. So anything to make them make more music, and if it's all going to be quality music, which I think all this music is, then I'm all for it. Honestly, if Kendrick drops a mixtape with like 7 songs or 10 songs and they're all good songs with a J. Cole disc that doesn't really have much teeth to it, because again, they're doing a friendly competition type of thing, perfectly fine with that. I like I'm perfectly fine with that. Let's talk about 7 minute drill. Let's talk about the main event. Some of the Cole lines are on the first verse. Well, first of all, the first thing is I appreciate that Cole continuously seems to make it clear that this is just for sport. This is not like any beef that they have, any friction that they don't hate each other. They're just doing it for the sport. Two examples of that on 7 minute drill. First verse, he's like, Lord, don't make me have to smoke this nigga because I fuck with him. But push come to shove on this mic, I will humble him. Okay, perfectly fine with that. Y'all still cool, but y'all dissing each other for the sport of rap. Perfect. Second verse, my text flooded with the hunger of a toxic reply. I'm hesitant. I love my brother, but I'm not gonna lie. Okay, good. I'm fine with that. However, the issue with this diss track is there are a lot of things that J. Cole tries to say that are not true. They are just straight up not true. I kind of see why it kind of comes this way, it comes out this way, because it seems like um he's kind of interpolating the Jay-Z, like Jay-Z diss track to Nas. I
Yeah,
forget the
take
name of
over.
it. Take
Take
over.
over. Yeah.
He's interpolating that. So I see why it's coming out this way, but let's get straight to it, right? I came up in the Ville, so I'm good when it's tension. He's still doing shows, but fell off like The Simpsons. Your first shit was classic. Your last shit was tragic. Your second shit put niggas to sleep, but they gassed it. Your third shit was massive, and that was your prime. Okay, so the first one is a classic. Good Kid, Mad City is a classic. That is true. The last one was tragic. Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. That is not true. Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers is probably one of the best albums of that year. Personally, not my favorite album of the year, but a lot of people love it. The second one, To Pimp a Butterfly, put niggas to sleep. J. Cole, you cannot talk about rappers putting people to sleep. You made For Your Eyes Only and KOD, two of the most boring albums that we've heard from the big three, probably in the whole discography. If you take all three, Drake, J. Cole, and Kendrick's discographies, and you put them together, unanimously, the most boring ones are For Your Eyes Only and KOD. You cannot say that, J. Cole. Yeah, that's really all I have to say
Yeah.
about that.
Do you think so a couple things. Do you think the tragic is about the album like not being good or like the subject matter?
Mm, that's okay.
But
Um,
even if it is subject matter, it is like okay.
I don't think it's
Like
about subject matter. Like I
no,
think that
I don't think it is either, but even if it was, it's like yeah.
I
Like
mean,
it's
like
just
if
the
it's
truth, you
more
know what I mean?
true,
It's like yeah.
yeah, like it's more
But
true if it's about the subject matter for sure.
so the other thing here is on our wonderful, well, at least, my favorite app, twitter.com X, the amount of people who are like, "Oh my god, Section 80 is actually first." Like, no, like Good Kid, Mad City put people to sleep. Like, no, what are you talking? It's like, come on, we know what he's talking about. Like all these idiots, like these, like really, like they're like, well, Section 80, and I'm like, he's not talking about Section 80. When people talk about
Although
Kendrick's,
Section 80 is a classic.
I'm not
Let's not
saying
get it twisted.
I'm not arguing otherwise. I'm saying that when when he's talking about Good Kid, Mad City, I saw so many people being like, how could he say Good Kid, Mad City put people to sleep? And I was like, he's not, bro. He's not talking about Good Kid, Mad City. I was like, you got to be so stupid to think that he's like, yeah, like one of like the four greatest hip hop albums ever put people to sleep, right? And again, To Pimp a Butterfly, that didn't put people to sleep either. Like the way people talk about that album has changed so much
Mhm,
over the last decade because when it came out, we were still that was still like pre-streaming or like right at the beginning of streaming like it because I remember it got leaked on accident on Apple Music, the clean version did, and then they just had to release it early, and that was right around the time that if you're reading this it's too late came out, and so that was like the beginning of streaming, but that was still at a point where like albums still carried like way more weight than they do now, right?
mhm,
And to say that like it's like come on, that's to Pimp a Butterfly is like with three albums technically, but two albums with like a major label. With just those two, like I was like, oh, this is like, maybe the best rapper ever,
mhm,
right? Off of two projects. And actually, it was funny because like Damn is probably my least favorite Kendrick project, and it's just because it's the most like it feels like it's like the most commercial product, but even then, like Kendrick is Kendrick, so it's like you can have a commercial product and it still feels like the real like because he does what he does. So
mhm.
I don't know. 7 Minute Drill, it's a good song. Like I like the beat switch. I like the second half more. He doesn't really say as much in the second half, but the second half I didn't like. It's tough. I love Cole when he's kind of like old school rapping, right?
Mhm.
Like I think he does that better than anybody. I think he gets on he can adopt that feel. So I think on the end of 7 Minute Drill where it slows down a little bit and it's a little more boom bappy, and I'm pretty sure it's Energy by Drake is the sample behind that
Mm, interesting.
second half of the instrumental. And
Mhm,
so I like it when Cole slows down and like really gets into it. The one thing I'll say about if we could start going song, not necessarily song by song, but I do think he's trying to hit like a lot of very fast reps
mhm.
throughout this project, and that's not always my favorite. I think he does it well some other places. There's some spots where I just am like skipping the song though because I'm like, this is good for like a real like big J. Cole fan, but for me, I'm not trying to listen to like someone rap as fast as they can about, so
Yeah.
but in terms of
Um,
the context, it's just like I don't know, man.
yeah. I mean, again, like I don't think that I just have to believe that if there was actual tension between J. Cole and Kendrick, there would be more of a aggressiveness in
Yeah.
7 Minute Drill,
Well, if
which
there was real tension, Soul would not be on this album.
yeah, that's another thing too. And speaking of soul, that's the other major headline of this album. Um let's talk about Pie. So first of all, it's one of my favorite tracks because of first of all, anything Absol's on. You already know. I love it. And Absol and Daylit going back and forth. Um great lyricism. Absol is one of the best lyricists we've ever seen, period, or ever heard, period. Daylet's production on that also is amazing. But the issue and the thing that almost ruins this is I don't understand why J. Cole is putting trans lines like anti-trans lines or things that could be interpreted as anti-trans lines in this when he's saying if you a demon, is you a demon or is that demeanor for the gram? Tell us. They plead the fifth. I'm seeing hints of a trans fella in cancel culture's facility. He's no killer, trust me. Beneath his chosen identity, there is still a pussy. Period. Blood spilling monthly rather than weekly as a myriad of bodies drop. First of all, like I don't there's an argument to be made that it's hip hop and everybody gets shot at, which okay, cool. But if you look at what's going on in the country, read the room. Like now is not the time for this. Additionally, if you're not a trans person, if you're a rapper and you're not a trans person, you should probably just like stop with the trans lines. Like they never go well. Like they literally never go well. So like optics standpoint, it just never goes well for you. Also, the line isn't really that good. Like it's not even like, oh, like that's something that nobody else could do. Like a bunch of people could do that. So I just don't see how those lines add value to the overall song. And it kind of, for some people, I can imagine, kind of tanks the song, which is really sad because Absol and Daylit, again, the chemistry on those first two verses are really, really good. And then also, Cole ends the his verse, third verse, off saying, "How many times is Cole gonna rap the album, the verse of the year? This ain't verse of the year. What are you talking about?
No.
Like that is way better than that." So again, there's more like I understand it's weird. J. Cole is in such a weird place because it's like if they're Drake and Jake and Kendrick aside, if there's anyone who can talk their shit and nobody can really answer to them, it's J. Cole. However, Kendrick is the one who was talking his shit. So now we're like, it's like J. Cole is usually the favorite. If you say like J. Cole versus like any other rapper besides Drake and Kendrick, he's usually the favorite. But now he has to be the underdog, and it doesn't really seem like it's just weird to hear him talk like he's the favorite when he's just so clearly not because he's bad or anything, but just because of how great Kendrick is. So I don't know, like Pie, I'm kind of mixed on. Like I still love it because of Absol and Daylit, but like the trans lines that J. Cole has there, it kind of it's something like if I could like how like you like an album but you might skip a song. Like if I could skip a few
Yeah.
seconds, I'd skip those few seconds and like I can enjoy the rest of it completely.
Yeah, I mean, it's this is so it's so tough on so many levels. And I think what you said is like it's perfect. It's like it just however you do it, it never goes well. There's no level of like, oh, like wit or anything that will make it, be received well. It's not like you know what I mean? And it's just such an unavoidable or not unavoidable. It's such an avoidable thing that
Mhm.
you just don't have to like, especially someone like Cole. It's like Cole, like J. Cole doesn't have to do that, right? Like he doesn't. And it's like on some like especially because then he talks about cancel culture in there, and like that's my least favorite type of
Yeah.
thing, right? Because then then it starts to feel like it's like modern like Chappelle, where it's like, oh, I'm just gonna like say all this shit because like they're gonna cancel me, but they're not actually gonna cancel anyone because people are still gonna show up to J. Cole shows. See, people are still gonna buy you know what I mean? And I don't know. I think there's so much, like you said, it's hip hop and it has a history of, like you said, everyone can get it. And it is definitely a specific section of the audience that takes issue with stuff like this, right? Like it's a lot of people who are much more socially. It's not like someone like who's just like putting this on and is like, all right, yeah, like I'm gonna put on the new J. Cole album, right? They're just gonna throw it on, they listen to the whole thing. They're not gonna. It's the people who are like close listening who are gonna jump on the internet and be like, hey, like, why did this happen, right? Because like I have to imagine that there's like millions of casual J. Cole fans who threw this album on and didn't even hear that,
Mhm.
right? Like it just went. It was just another 3 bars in the middle of a song, and it's one of those things where it's just like it's so avoidable, and then we don't have to have this conversation, and it's a much larger conversation than me and you can cover right here. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? But
Also, we're also not qualified to have that because
yeah, no,
neither of us are
exactly, and
fans.
that's
Yeah.
that's what
Okay.
I'm saying, and that's
Mhm.
why I think it's as Cole is relatively not in the same place because he is the one making the music,
Mhm.
but in terms of like being like involved in this conversation, it's like it's an avoidable conversation. It's like you know, it's trying to weave too much like
Yeah.
shit in that doesn't need to be woven in. And sometimes this is why it's honestly refreshing that Drake doesn't touch on like real life stuff. It's like his real life stuff. You know what I mean? It's like,
Mhm.
but in terms of like the crazy stuff, like, or not the crazy stuff, but like the real political stuff, like he pretty much stays away from it. And then, and I saw a lot of people trying to draw like false equivalents with Kendrick on, what was the song on?
Auntie Diaries.
Yeah, like people trying to draw
That's stupid.
comparisons there.
Yeah.
And it's like, yo, we gotta stop taking stuff as like the lyric cards on Genius, right? We have to stop looking at music like this because it's like there's so much more context to that, right? And like
Mhm.
I think you and I talked about it when that Kendrick album came out. Like it was certainly harsh to hear, right? To hear
Mhm.
like certain things, but it's such a different. It's not using anything as a punchline. It's not using it as a joke. It's not using it as an insult, right?
Mhm.
It was a lot different.
It's
There's
using to
context
teach,
there.
if anything.
There's context, right? And it's
Mhm.
like we had this conversation yesterday, and it's tough, man. To like a Cole album came out, and we're just gonna end up talking about the larger context. But it's like, when Cole released this album, this wasn't like, oh, like everybody's gonna shift the conversation to just me now. It's like, no, everyone is gonna add this to the conversation, and then we can move on from there. But this is where, and Cole's admitted it. He said that he's in third behind the other two, right?
Mhm.
Like he's out of the big three that he would be in third. And I think how I feel about this album is so, and I'm a much bigger, obviously bigger Drake fan and much bigger Kendrick fan than I ever have been of J. Cole. But there's a level that those two can reach because they give so much of themselves that Cole can't get to, if that makes sense. And Cole
Yeah.
gives so much of himself, but it's different. Like he's so much, and it sounds so like shitty to put it this way, but like Drake and Kendrick are much more compelling characters than, J. Cole in the grand scheme of things. And that could be because when you and I were in our like formative years of really like establishing our taste, he was like pulling away from everything and he was
Hmm.
making those two albums that we don't love. And so then, like the opinion that gets set with me and you when we're 19 or 20 years old, like we're probably going to end up holding that, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, like, yeah,
Yeah.
when I was around like the most people my age concentrated having these conversations, like every day hearing this stuff, whether it's, you know what I mean? It's like Drake and Kendrick are moving the needle. Like we have a Drake disc that was just like the second most listened to rap song of the decade.
Hmm.
And it's like, yeah, because Kendrick did it and he's talking about Drake.
Yeah.
Like if Kendrick came out and dissed some like Larry June, right? Like it wouldn't be, it wouldn't, it like, and it's tough. And this is where the big three conversation is tough because there is a certain artist who I think might probably should be number three,
Yeah.
but
I
doesn't
mean,
doesn't
to your
fit
point
in there.
also, there were I forget what song it is, but there's a song where J. Cole's like, maybe I just don't have like anything else to say to y'all.
Yeah,
Like that, like he says that and he says it like he raps it. But like I think this is kind of an example of that. Like the raps are still good and it's still like better than most people, like 99% of current rappers
yeah,
today can make. But like in terms of like substance, it doesn't really seem like he's saying anything much more. And it's weird because like we kind of like put him in the same category of Kendrick once upon a time in terms of he always has something to say. And now it's like it seems like KOD was kind of the end of that. And KOD and For Your Eyes Only are like it's like it's either you have something to say and then the music isn't as good, or the music is great and you're talking about nothing. It seems like it's
right.
either those two options for J. Cole now. And that's kind of disappointing because he is someone that we have considered and still do consider part of the big three. But part of the reason why is because he's able to make the good music and then at the same time have something to say. And now those two things are being split. It's kind of weird. Just going real quickly through Pricey, really good intro, love that, one of my
Yep.
favorite tracks. Ready 24, love that track too. Getting Cameron on the feature, beautiful. It that one kind of seems like J. Cole's kind of like trying to live a childhood dream, like he
Yeah,
finally lived a childhood dream, and I love that.
I do too.
um
I do too.
HYB. I don't know. The other thing with the Genius cards and stuff like that, everybody's talking about like like certain lines that they hate, and it's like, who cares? Like the alphabet line, I don't care about it that much. Like it's not the best line ever, but is it the worst line ever? No. Like there
No,
are worse lines on this album, and like for you guys to just like take that out and be like, oh, this alphabet line is kind of corny. Like I mean, like it's smoother than a lot of what your favorite rappers can do. Like I don't really understand that. Sticks and Stones, like that song. Fever's a good track. Needs to be longer. Good track.
yeah.
Needs to be longer.
To me, Fever
Um,
just doesn't fit here because I'm like, it's a little more like I don't know, smooth, I guess. And when
yeah.
I'm looking for like bars and he's in here like halfway through, he's like, let me give you a smooth one though. And I'm like, all right.
I also like that the track with Central C, is that HYB? That is
Yeah.
HYB. Yeah. There's some drill elements on there.
Yeah.
And we see that again on is that stealth? No, we see that again. It is stealth mode. Yeah. And I believe stealth mode and HYB have Boss on it. So Boss being on HYB, because Central C is mostly like a drill rapper. Like he could rap, but like his beats are typically more
Yeah.
drill, but he gives you more lyricism than most drill rappers will. Um Boss being on there with his melody, I feel like that's he's basically the glue. He's basically the Draymond of that song in terms of like putting it all together. And
Yeah.
HYB ends up being one of my favorite songs because of that. Um, Before we get into playback value and then final thoughts, do you have anything more? Any tracks stand out to you that you
The
want to
one
talk
that
about?
stands out to me is like 3001 feels like such a nostalgic song, right?
Hmm.
Like to have that like intro where he's like, it's the super filtered voice. It felt like a song that we'd get like a mixtape cut that we would have gotten in 2011 or 2012 from an artist who's like, yo, they're going to be listening to me in 3001. And that was so refreshing. Man, I've kept saying it like now that like we can complain about Cole or whatever, but the adults are in the room, right?
Yeah.
Like the adults are back in the room, right? Like Q is here, Kendrick's here, uh, Cole's here. Drake doesn't act like an adult anymore, but he's here. You know what I mean? Like Future's here again. Future and Drake kind of in a similar spot where that's like, yeah, you guys are almost 40.
Metro's here.
Metro, yeah, Metro's like the young adult. Metro's like the cool, like assistant coach.
He grew up.
You
He
know what
grew
I
up a
mean?
little too fast.
Yeah, right, yeah, but it was because he was like a prodigy, though. It wasn't
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean? It's like, no, he's like, yeah, it's like I was making beats for
All
Future when I was
the
21.
all the 18-year-olds want to go party. And he just wants to sit down and read a nice book and have a
He's
nice glass
a
of wine or something.
he's a graduate assistant. Like when you
Yes.
see like the guy,
Yes.
college football guy, and it's like, yeah, I played 4 years, got hurt, played a fifth year, and now I've been a grad assistant for 3 years. It's like, yeah, you got it, Metro. You got it. You're putting setting people up to succeed.
Yes.
Um, you want to get into the end?
Yeah, let's get into playback value.
All right,
I could go first.
cool.
It's J. Cole. This is gonna last forever because J. Cole
Yeah.
has just like such a huge fan base. It's gonna last forever. But subjectively, I'll probably give it like 6 months, maybe a year. Like, because again, like besides the trans lines and the diss not being as aggressive as, or like it just needs to be a little bit more aggressive, like just like a tad bit more aggressive, and it's like, okay, this is a good
Yeah.
response.
Well, the only
Um,
line he had, first of all, he took it from Jay-Z anyways, but the
mhm.
only line that means something is like, oh, he averages like one hard verse every 30 months. Like something like that is like, it's like,
First of
yeah,
all,
you don't
first of
rap.
all, first of all, before you went on this feature run, J. Cole, so did you.
No, I know, but exactly.
Additionally,
And now
the
and I think that's why some things fall flat because it's like, Cole,
yeah.
you did this.
Yeah, like you did this. Like you're literally dissing yourself. Like, and the other thing too is him talking about like four albums in like 12 months. They have the
Yeah.
same amount of albums in the same amount of time.
Yeah. Well, and this is why everyone's like, oh, Kendrick would kill Drake head to head rap. It's like, yeah, probably. Like, you know what I
Mhm,
mean? Kendrick's like,
mhm,
sure. But there's one guy who's figured out how to be the biggest rapper in the world for 10 years now.
mhm,
Right. And like, and it's not because like all like contrary to popular belief, it's not because all the music sucks. And it's just
mhm.
like, you know what I mean? So that's where it's like a little different because it's like, Cole, like you did this. You like when everyone was like taking off into the social media superstar era, you pulled away.
Mhm.
But
And
that's
and
besides the
another
point.
thing to that point too, or just like the overall point of him like living the childhood dream. I feel like the childhood dream is him being Jay-Z dissing Nas and
Yeah.
Nas being Kendrick, at least in this circumstance. And it's
Yeah,
weird because
but
it seems like he's so in this 7 minute drill, he's so much more focused on living the childhood dream than actually making the diss make sense.
well, that's because in the grand scheme of things here, Cole isn't Jay-Z.
Yeah,
If this is Jay-Z and Nas reincarnated, he's not Jay-Z, right?
yeah,
If you want to make Kendrick Nas, like we know who Jay-Z is. And like
yeah.
that I'm biased because I love Hove and I love, you know what I mean, Drake too. But like, anyways, final thoughts or not final thoughts. Playback. Objective, I agree with you. J. Cole's fans are going to take whatever they want from this and keep it going forever, especially if this blows up into like a real classic rap beef. We're going to have it'll all be pieces of a puzzle later on that'll be awesome to put together and be like, all right, these songs had these little jabs, and then we'll get the whole, the whole
And
picture.
we'll finish the story just by saying that Metro and Future changed the game once again.
Yeah, and so that's objective. This is gonna like the Dreamville fan base is strong enough where they're gonna keep this going. For me, there's certain songs in here that I'm definitely taking with me, and we can get. I'll put this right into my favorites. Certain songs are coming with me. Other ones I'm not going to listen to ever again because
Mhm.
I'm listening to these songs as part of something larger. I'm not
Yeah,
going to Cole to listen to a Cole album.
yeah.
So I can put that right into my favorite tracks. If that works
Um,
for you, do you want final thoughts and
yeah.
favorites?
Let's get through 5,000 favorites.
Cool.
Favorites. You could go first.
Perfect. So I think it all plays together for me. So final thoughts is this is a good mixtape, and I like to look at it as a mixtape because it makes me a little nostalgic for when that was a real thing. So I think Cole raps very well throughout this whole thing. I think the disses, if they are disses, fall flat. If they're just little jabs, it is what it is. And that's kind of what this is to me. It's like a jab. It's like a hey, I'm responding for the sport, but this isn't the main event. That's my final thought. This isn't the main event. Sorry. Sorry, J. Cole. Favorite tracks, I love Crocodile Tears, and this is, yeah, I'll say this is in order. Crocodile Tears number one, 3001 number two, Sticks and Stones number three.
Okay. My final thoughts are might delete later, contains great music, that will ultimately be overshadowed by a lackluster response to Kendrick Lamar. The production on this album confirms J. Cole's Platinum with No Features run is more of a blemish on his discography. Additionally, with that, J. Cole was like producing like every single track throughout that No Features run too. So like that's really where that blemish kind of comes into play. My top three tracks in order: Pricey, Hesitantly, Pie, and then HYB. All right, this has been episode 4 of the Cat Podcast. Don't forget to leave your comment, leave your opinion of Might Delete Later by J. Cole in the comments below. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Follow Old Milk on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. Check out all the Old Milk content on oldmilk.co. I'm Nate Sperling. That is Taylor McLeod, and we will be back when hip hop tells us to, which is probably going to be next week because Future and Metro Boomin are dropping again. Till then, we will see you. Thanks for watching.
We don't trust you.